Good morning, everyone. This is Michelle Clark. I am the manager of the Vocation, Education, Employment, and Reentry Unit here at the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives, Division of Criminal Justice Services. At this time, I'd like to thank you for joining us for the County Reentry Task Force Enhanced Service Coordination Training, and I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Commissioner and Director Robert Macarone for welcoming remarks and introductions.
Thank you, Michelle, and I want to acknowledge that Michelle Clark heads up our VER unit, Vocation, Employment, Training, and Reentry unit at OPCA, and she is joined by Frank Cangiano and Melinda Vick, who recently joined us from the Department of Correction and Community Supervision. Really a dynamic team that works very hard each day to assist the local County Reentry Task Forces. This morning's training, I think, is really an exciting training. I've reviewed the slides in advance, and there's really a lot of information contained in these slides, excuse me, for the County Reentry Task Forces. Today's session is really entitled Enhancement Case Planning, Enhanced Service Coordination. Now we are in what I often refer to as the third generation of the County Reentry Task Force model. The first was primarily an organization and reorganization with the co-chairs, which has served us well, moved toward performance-based contracting, a lot of training around stabilization and criminogenic needs. The second generation saw the implementation of Ready, Set, Work, a cognitive approach to employment readiness, as well as the use of other cognitive behavioral intervention tools, including Thinking for a Change, MRT, and most recently the introduction of interactive journaling, which I think better accommodates the needs of the individual under supervision. The third generation moves us to an enhanced service case planning and service coordination. And during the next hour or so, we're going to learn exactly what that means. But primarily, it is a focus on ensuring that individuals really get the services they need. And I'm not going to go into too much more detail than that, but just emphasize that our interactions with these individuals under supervision, that client engagement, and the assurance that they are truly getting the services they need can be instrumental in helping them live law-abiding lives and reducing future offender recidivism. Having said that, we're placing a premium now on that client engagement. I also want to say that it's a delicate walk and balance because we don't want to impose additional requirements on individuals under supervision. If you think about it, their primary responsibility under supervision is to report to their parole officer and to comply with those conditions in leading a lawful lifestyle. And so we want to draw a distinction between the legal and important role that parole officers play in case management and the support role that our County Reentry Task Forces play in providing service planning and service coordination, all in support of effective case management. Your roles are important. This is a marriage that between case management and service coordination that really idealizes, frankly, the premium to help individuals live law-abiding lives while they get the services. We know this population well. You know it well. These people have enormous needs in returning to their community. And on that note, I'll conclude my comments by saying to you, we deeply appreciate and recognize the important work that you do each and every day in your respective communities. We've been out to the County Reentry Task Forces. We see the level of commitment and diligence that you demonstrate each and every day. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for the good work that you do. Back to Michelle.
Thank you, DC and Director Macarone. At this time, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Frank Cangiano, and he's going to go over with us the learning objectives of today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So at the conclusion of this webinar, participants will be able to define the term enhanced service coordination, especially as it relates to the Canada Reentry Task Forces and the work that is being done. Participants will also be able to discuss the importance of providing service planning and coordination to not only address the stabilization needs of your clients, but also to address those criminogenic needs, which really relate to a reduction of recidivism for your participants. And finally, we are all going to learn and identify ways to better support the CRTF participants when making referrals to programs. The partnerships with these programs are an extremely important piece regarding the County Reentry Task Forces, and we want to make sure that this work especially is being continued. So when we look at the overview of the 2019 and 2020 CRTF program, the recent guidance document laid out the components of such a program as follows. So we're looking at CRTFs continuing the case conference process, where we see a pre-release model as being the preferred model for case conferencing. Then it rolls over to intake and service coordination planning, service coordination itself, and then goes into the cognitive behavioral interventions and employment readiness curricula. Although the focus of this particular webinar will be on intake and service coordination planning and service coordination, we did feel it was important just to touch upon all the components of the CRTF before doing a deep dive, if you will, into intake and service coordination. So as I said before, case conferencing, a pre-release model is preferred. DCJS does accept post-release models as long as referrals and case conferences are held soon thereafter, either during the intake process or especially if you have walk-in clients that come into your offices. For these case conferences, attendees should include the CRTF coordinator and staff, DOCCS co-chair or designee, county co-chair or designee, DSS or DHA, mental health, a health homes representative, as well as other relevant service providers. For intake, we are really defining intake as a face-to-face, real-time appointment, ideally at the area reporting office for parole, with the CRTF staff and the participants. A parole officer can be invited, but it's understandable if he or she cannot attend such an appointment. And we're seeing intake as really a client engagement opportunity. And this is where CRTF staff are encouraged to use their motivational interviewing skills as well as their effective client engagement skills in this arena. During this intake process, the CRTF coordinator or staff is reviewing the participant information with the participant, the records and information in the CRTF Referral Packet, as well as any information that was shared at the case conference. The CRTF staff should discuss the benefits of service coordination at this intake appointment, identify the needs to discuss and address them as part of the service coordination plan, and review the expectations of the CRTF participant as well as CRTF staff. It is very important to convey genuineness and a desire to help them transition successfully into the community, especially at this early stage of service coordination. And this will most likely give you a truer picture of the participant's level of motivation if they feel that they can speak freely and openly to you as CRTF staff. And at the intake appointment is where the service coordination plan should be developed. As we indicated earlier on in the welcome and introductions, we are really distinguishing service coordination from case management, as we view case management to be more of a parole officer function. DOCCS manages the parolee, CRTF coordinates the services for the parolee. For CBI and employment readiness, all CRTFs per the guidance document are required to provide a CBI and/or employment readiness services. A parole officer may request that a CRTF participant enroll in the CBI at the case conference or later in the process of working with CRTF. The criminogenic needs that gave rise to the offending behavior should certainly be taken into consideration when making referrals to the CBI. And for those of you who probably don't know or may not know, the use of a CBI really teaches new skills and promotes long-term behavioral change that research has shown reduces recidivism. Employment readiness programming, such as the Ready, Set, Work program, in which we offer training, is another intervention widely used in the CRTF to teach participants how to obtain and maintain employment. Through this employment programming, the participants are instructed on the necessary soft skills to obtain and maintain employment. Other components per the guidance document are those bi-monthly meetings. As outlined in the guidance document and the work plan, these meetings should be held every 2 months, and invitees should include DOCCS staff, DCJS staff, Commissioner of DSS or designee, Commissioner of Mental Health, Health Homes representatives, substance abuse service professionals, housing representatives, and other reentry support services. Agendas should be sent to invitees at least 1 week prior to the meeting date, and agendas should include a year-to-date outcomes and achievements, as well as a discussion of any barriers experienced by the CRTF staff or referred services. There's also an attendance sheet that's passed around at these meetings, and such an attendance sheet should be provided to the DCJS representative assigned to your CRTF. We also felt it was important to continue public outreach and education, so we included that as a component of the CRTF in their work plans. This is really meant to engage members of the community, including formerly incarcerated individuals and their families, to build a comprehensive reentry system through community and outreach, and events like job fairs, resource fairs, community forum discussions, even simply a publication of informational materials and advertising can really bring your CRTF to the entire region you serve. So we're not all just living in a bubble when we're working with these participants. And the final component of a CRTF is a viewing of distance learning modules. So these modules, found focusing on evidence-based interventions and practices, should be viewed within 6 months of the contract execution or within 6 months of new staff hiring date. And if you have not yet gained access to the Integrated Justice Portal to view these modules, please let your OPCA representative know as soon as possible. So now Michelle is going to talk about the service planning process and where it begins.
Okay, thank you, Frank. So for this slide, we're really going to look at where does the service planning process begin. So in essence, it does truly begin at case conference. Ideally, what we're doing here is pointing out that quality service coordination is developed with the benefit of having that case conference conversation to really discuss the stabilization, criminogenic, and mandated conditions of release, having a community supervision staff present, the CRTF staff present, as well as other service providers in the community. We encourage CRTFs to obviously review the COMPAS Re-Entry bar chart, as well as any DOCCS case plans that may be available to you at the time of the case conference to be able to get as much information on the participant as possible. It's important for CRTF staff to bring each referred case to the case conference committee, whether this referral from community supervision is pre or post-release. The information sharing and brainstorming that takes place at these meetings is, as I said before, essential to understanding the mandated conditions of release as well as the stabilization and criminogenic needs. This, of course, is why I say that service planning and the service coordination plan really does begin at case conference. We do support the pre-release model of case conferencing. As said, we do accept also that there are going to be instances where a post-release case conference is done to speak about someone who is a walk-in from the community or someone that parole community supervision has referred after the individual has been released into the community. Okay. So I'm turning it over to Melinda Vick for our next slide.
Thank you, Michelle. So now we're going to look at the process. And really this is a flow of the way that this should be happening. The pre-release model, the case conference. The CRTFs and DOCCS have designed a system by which the CRTF referral packet is provided to the CRTFs in a timely manner. So DOCCS identifies the participant for the CRTF participation. The Deputy Superintendent of Programs and or the Supervising Offender Rehabilitation Coordinators are notified by DOCCS via email, generally 30 to 120 days pre-release. Offender Rehabilitation Coordinator reviews CRTF program components with potential participant, and a CRTF consent form is signed. Community supervision obtains the signed consent from the guidance staff at the facility and completes the CRTF referral. The CRTF coordinator reviews the referral packet and schedules the case conference. CRTF case conference is held on a bi-weekly basis. So ideally, this is how a pre-release case conference process is structured. We begin with parole officers identifying participants for the CRTF. Once the facility is aware that the parole officer has identified an individual for the CRTF, the Offender Rehabilitation Coordinator reviews the benefits of the CRTF with the identified participant. A consent is either signed if the inmate is in agreement with the referral or not signed if he or she is not agreeable to work with the CRTF. If a consent is signed, DOCCS guidance staff at the facility sends the signed consent back to the Community Supervision Office. The CRTF referral packet is then generated by Community Supervision. The CRTF staff collects the referral packets in order to prepare for pre-release case conferencing. These case conferences are held on a bi-weekly basis. It is incumbent upon the coordinator and the co-chairs of the CRTF to encourage and support the collaboration between CRTF staff and DOCCS. The case conference is where service planning and coordination really begins. If your CRTF needs to conduct a post-release case conference, please ensure that the CRTF signed consent and the referral packet are in hand at the case conference, as well as the TAPER and COMPAS Re-Entry bar chart and the COMPAS narrative. And now I'm going to turn it back to Michelle to review the COMPAS Re-Entry.
So as you'll see throughout this webinar, we're going to be going between each other to give you some information on this process. And so now we're working to talk about the importance of the COMPAS Re-Entry bar chart and the criminogenic needs scales that you see on this slide. So the importance of understanding the assessment tool that is used to determine criminogenic needs and the risk level for parolees can't be overemphasized. The COMPAS Re-Entry is a validated risk and need assessment used by DOCCS. It assesses a person's risk of felony violence, risk of arrest, and risk of absconding. It is used to determine the supervision level of the parolee as well. It also assesses the criminogenic needs of the individual in the following areas: criminal history involvement, history of violence, prison conduct or misconduct, relationships, lifestyle characteristics such as substance abuse issues, personality issues, attitudes, including whether or not the individual has a likelihood for negative social cognitions rather, and low self-efficacy. Family support and social exclusions such as their financial status upon release, as well as their employment expectations or history, are also noted. The COMPAS Re-Entry Legacy Bar Chart should be reviewed at each case conference whenever possible. This is where the criminogenic needs should be reviewed and discussed so that the appropriate interventions that are available through the CRTF are put into place upon the individual's return to the community. And for post-release case conferences, as we've said, this is just as important. If your CRTF needs to conduct a post-release case conference, please ensure that the signed consent, as Melinda had said, and the referral packet are in hand at that case conference. So the service coordination planning process is what we're going to start speaking about now. Beginning at the case conference, we're incorporating information from the risk and needs assessment, as we stated, which are found in the COMPAS Re-Entry, and other supporting documentation from DOCCS. We're incorporating the information obtained in that face-to-face intake appointment so that the participant has the opportunity to help and invest in developing their service coordination plan. And also germane to the service coordination planning process is that we have the support and approval of the parole officer assigned to the case.
So what is service coordination? Service coordination is understanding the needs of the participant. Addressing the primary needs of returning citizens, stabilization needs such as lack of housing, sufficient housing, transportation, child care, lack of medical care, and any other primary need. In order to work on changing patterns of behavior, these survival needs must be addressed quickly and satisfactorily. Criminogenic needs, which we'll go over in detail in later slides, are the needs that can give rise to ongoing criminal behavior. Understanding these needs is critical to developing a quality service coordination plan. Using effective client engagement as a skill-based approach to building trust with the participant in a culturally competent and trauma-informed way. Effective client engagement skills are essential to building a rapport with your CRTF participants. We need to be cognizant of trauma as well as sensitive to cultural differences. Empowering the participant to make sustainable changes in behavior and avoid recidivism. One of the paramount goals in working with CRTF participants is building their confidence to handle life's challenges. It is important that we address self-efficacy, the belief that someone can and will be able to take care of oneself. Moreover, we need to ensure that we encourage our participants to address those criminogenic needs by motivating them to engage in CBI and/or job readiness training to increase their chances of long-term changes to behavior. Assessing the participant's level of motivation to pursue established goals. Motivation to change is key to developing a quality service coordination plan. If you are motivated to participate in an activity, it is much more likely that you will benefit from it. Using your motivational interviewing skills is very important here and will improve the working relationship you build with your participants. Assisting the participant in meeting those goals by coordinating the services to address the identified stabilization and criminogenic needs, i.e., accompanying the participant to DSS for such an appointment, assisting participant in filling out housing application, addressing barriers such as child care issues, and transportation. We are encouraging CRT staff to connect participants to services in a meaningful way, not just simply handing them a business card or telling them to call a service provider, especially at the onset of the service planning and coordination, such as the intake appointment, where not only can important appointments be scheduled, but barriers and obstacles to reaching their goals can be discussed. I offer this example. A participant advises you at his or her first meeting with you that he or she will be using the local bus system to get to appointments, as he or she doesn't have a car. You can assume that since they've told you that they're using the bus system, that they know how to navigate the bus system, but they may not. Identifying barriers to achieving their goals is a very important part of service planning coordination.
I just want to jump in real quick on that because it's very important to think about an example such as that because as Melinda's trying to say, you know, we assume sometimes that when an individual comes to us, we're trying to build a rapport, et cetera, and learn about their needs and their capabilities, that they have it under control. And they're sometimes quite convincing, whether it be, you know, I worked with probation departments for many years. I was a probation officer for a very long time, working directly with probationers in the community. They want to do well. They want to show us that they can achieve the things that we're expecting of them. However, sometimes they're not telling us the whole story about what their needs really are. So it is really important to establish that rapport, as Melinda was talking about, encouraging them to participate in the service development plan in a meaningful way, and not just handing them a business card or handing them a bus schedule and assuming that they will know how to take it from there. So I just wanted to jump in and offer that too.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
So the next slide, what is not service coordination? Service coordination is not a quick chat in the hallway of the area reporting office, handing the participant a business card and sending them on their way to make an appointment with a provider they're not familiar with, monitoring compliance with mandated conditions of release. This is what is not service coordination. Why are these things not considered quality service coordination? What does service coordination provide that enhances the likelihood the participant will successfully meet his or her goals?
And that's a good segue into our next slide, which is effective client engagement. Frank?
Thank you, Michelle and Melinda. So effective client engagement, this is something that that is truly a goal, a skill that takes time to develop with participants. So this is really about enhancing the CRTF coordinator's role and staff roles when they're meeting with their participants, especially during the initial phases of service coordination. So effective client engagement really speaks to the quality of time spent with the participants. So it speaks to time spent with the participant that has to be used effectively and with the goal to address stabilization and criminogenic needs. This will then hopefully lead to greater focus on the case plan or service plan. Connecting participants to a network of services. I've been to several different county reentry task forces across New York State, and I see firsthand the number of service providers, the network of service providers that are at these meetings. So as CRTF staff, you really need to know the immediate community, what's around you, what's accessible to your participants, and build these partnerships with this network that you have. Connecting participants to these services and resources and showing them how to navigate these systems is what is meant by service coordination. And as Melinda spoke to in the last slide, handing a participant a business card is not considered to be that. It's not considered to be service coordination. Using your client engagement skills dynamically. So when we speak to that, we really say that they have to change with the participant. You have to meet the participant where they're at. If the participant is changing their own goals, if things occur, if they lose their housing, or even if they gain their housing, that service coordination plan will be modified, will change, as will your skills in meeting with them. So what the fourth bullet really speaks to is enhancing your own skills as a CRTF to meet the needs of this population. So that's what we mean by effective client engagement for the CRTF population.
So now we're going to go into CRTF coordinator and service coordination staff. So one of the big points that we want to drive home right now is that there is a difference between case management and service coordination. As for case management, you may be just setting up appointments and sending a person on their way. Service coordination is really wrapping services around our individuals so they get the services that they really need. So as service coordinators, first, we want to use motivational interviewing and effective client engagement skills. All CRTF staff should be trained in motivational interviewing and possess effective client engagement skills. The use of motivational interviewing is essential as a CRTF coordinator and staff member. Regularly assessing the participants' willingness to engage with services and work toward their service plan goals is a main function of the CRTF staff. DCJS offers many opportunities for training in motivational interviewing. Second, develop reasonable and achievable service plan goals with the participants at the face-to-face intake appointment. The service coordination plan should contain goals that are reasonable and achievable for the participant. Assessing the participant's willingness to work on these goals, his or her motivation to attend treatment or support groups is important. The face-to-face intake appointment is where the service coordination should be completed. Show the participants how to navigate through the community services to which they are referred. And connect participants with the necessary resources and schedule appointments with the participant. CRTF staff are expected to connect the participants with recommended stabilization services, as well as assist the participant with scheduling the appointments such as substance abuse treatment, cognitive behavioral interventions, and/or job readiness training. Make initial contact with providers to which the participant is referred to ensure appointments are scheduled and services are appropriate for the participant. An example is using this next slide, which is an appointment slip, to provide a reminder to the participant whenever possible. Although our individuals are quite capable of potentially using a phone or putting things in a phone, sometimes having a piece of paper with all of their appointments written on it in front of them that they can hang on the refrigerator or keep in their car is an essential tool, as simple as it is. CRTF staff are in a position to model how to schedule appointments, remove barriers, and navigate services by showing the participant how this is done. Remember, some of your participants have never done these types of activities and have been incarcerated for a long period of time. They may even be embarrassed about what they may need to do. So each participant will be different, and some may need more assistance, while others may be a little more proactive and prove to be pretty self-sufficient. Make sure you assess the participant's level of motivation and understanding of the tasks he or she is responsible for doing and coordinate those services accordingly.
I just wanted to add something also with respect to this coordination, CRTF coordinator and service coordination staff slide, if we can go back. So with respect to differentiating between case managers and service coordinators, I want to also state what we previously talked about, which is that, parole officers, namely, are monitoring the compliance with respect to the parolee, which is more of the role of the case manager. So when we're talking about managing a parolee's case, that's something that parole officers, do. So for the service coordination team, which is the CRTF coordinator and their staff, we are really doing what Melinda was talking about, which is assessing motivation, client engagement skills, interviewing them to the degree that we're finding out what's important to them, in addition to what their mandated conditions of release are, and then helping them to address those stabilization and criminogenic needs over time. And I also want to go back to bullet 2, where it talks about developing reasonable and achievable service plan goals with the participant at the face-to-face intake appointment. We realize as practitioners, all of us have worked in the field before, whether it be at parole or probation, that sometimes a service coordination plan cannot be fully completed at the first intake appointment. We understand that. So what we're looking at is having the development of the service coordination plan take place starting at your first appointment. And we're going to get into a little bit more about how we're documenting that, and we're going to talk about that a little later in other slides. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so CRTF coordinator and service coordination staff continuation. Conduct periodic reviews of the service coordination plan. Reviewing the service coordination plan can be done at each meeting with the participant. We would like to see the service coordination plan reviewed at least every 30 to 45 days. Service coordination plan should be updated and revised when goals are met, goals and tasks, to note the progress a participant is making. When revisions are made, a new service plan coordination should be provided to the participant and kept in the case file. An updated service coordination plan should be provided to the parole officer as well. Offer incentives for progress. Progress should be acknowledged, if not celebrated. Some CRTFs use incentives such as celebratory party when a group has been successfully completed, family and friends events, certificates of completion for successfully completing a program or group, providing opportunities for participants to share their success story with members of their groups, which can be impactful. We should meet the participant where they are. Area reporting office, service providers, DSS. DCJS encourages the CRTF staff to meet participants where they are at, in the community, at the area reporting office, at a service provider's office if appropriate, at Department of Social Services in order to provide assistance to a participant who is seeking benefits. Telephone and email contact is also sufficient and can be used to keep in contact with participants whose needs don't require a great deal of face-to-face contact. It's important to remember that failure to follow through with an appointment made with a CRTF staff should not result in a punitive response. This is an area where we have to work with our participants to see what's going on, check up on them, and then follow up. Avoid over-programming the participant. Participants have families, jobs, appointments with parole officer, and many other obligations. We discourage the practice of requiring a participant to attend a CRTF appointment. We would like to see CRTF staff at area reporting offices, as that is a required appointment for the participant, and seeing him or her at that location will most likely be convenient for the participant. Follow up on a regular basis with referral agencies and document the follow-up in case notes. Following up with service providers, not only to support participant attendance, but also to ensure that the services that are being provided are appropriate. Document the contact you have with the providers in your case notes as well.
Thank you, Melinda.
Now I'm going to be going over some guidelines for developing the service coordination plan. So there are several, as indicated by this slide. So we'll be going over them bullet by bullet. So the CRTFs should ensure that the plan is developed with input from the participants along with information obtained from the case conference. This will help identify and address the primary needs of returning citizens with their input as well as information obtained in the case conference. The development of the service coordination plan is informed by the COMPAS Re-Entry and any other available case plans from DOCCS. Recall from the former slide that Michelle talked about that the COMPAS Re-Entry informs and supports the service coordination plan. Service coordination plans address the stabilization and criminogenic needs, the goals to be achieved, and services that are supported by the CRTF as well as the parole officer. So when we talk about services supported by CRTF and DOCCS, we are talking about the resources available to participants in the community, such as substance abuse treatment, anger management, CBI, such as thinking for a change, interactive journaling, and or employment readiness programming, such as the Ready, Set, Work, or the CBI employment, which is available in certain CRTFs in the state. For example, those participants who have criminogenic needs of negative social cognitions, negative peer associations, lack of family support, and or lack of employment or education should be referred to a CBI and or employment readiness training when appropriate. So for bullet 4, we talk about ensuring that the service coordination plan be approved and signed by the participant and the CRTF staff. So it is required case file documentation that the service coordination plan signed by the participant and CRTF staff is available in the case files. Ideally, input was already obtained from parole during this process and is incorporated into that service coordination plan. A copy of the service coordination plan must be provided to the parole officer in the spirit of collaboration, and identifying of barriers and challenges and strategies to overcome them, as well as what the participant has to do to achieve those goals, should also be listed in the service coordination plan. So those are just some guidelines for you as CRTF staff to help you in that process. So the CRTF staff, when reviewing the service coordination plan, should review the plan periodically, at least every 30 to 45 days, reviewing this service coordination plan. While reviewing this plan, the CRTF staff are encouraged to highlight progress and address any barriers, that are standing in the way of progress. It would be beneficial for the participant, CRTF staff, and the parole officer to review the progress toward reaching goals as well. Whenever possible, the CRTF staff should attempt to arrange for this to occur. We understand that many of us juggle many tasks, the people in this room included, and parole officers have many cases to supervise, so even if this only occurs once throughout the period of service coordination, this collaboration between the participant, CRTF staff, and the parole officer could really prove to aid the participant in achieving his or her goals. And as always, CRTF staff are encouraged to obtain status reports from the providers for proper case file documentation. Speaking about modifying the plan as needed and providing a copy of the revised plan to the parole officer, when the service coordination plan is updated or modified, a copy should be provided to the participant as well as the parole officer to keep them involved in this process as well. And you will also keep that for case file documentation. Prior to the conclusion of service coordination, the CRTF staff should review the service coordination plan with the parole officer and the participant to determine whether CRTF service coordination should continue. Ultimately, once all the goals outlined in the plan are met, the CRTF staff and participant, as well as the parole officer, should discuss ending service coordination. Now we're going to go into a case study to help demonstrate this.
Yes, thank you, Frank. So we thought it would be a good idea to really get into a case together to talk about how to develop a service coordination plan for our case study, Evan. So if you look at this slide, we are identifying a male, age 45, divorced, with a criminal history that includes drug trafficking and prior offenses that include possession and sale of drugs, criminal gang activity, which is a negative peer affiliation, theft, firearms, assault, and domestic violence. There's a family situation that involves 3 children, they're teenagers, and there's limited contact. There's a health condition identified as hepatitis C, and it's been identified that this individual does not currently have Medicaid. There is a housing need identified, which would be that the individual currently is living with the father. It says temporarily, so there's a potential need for us to find and help this individual locate housing. There is no indication of a mental health history. There is information with respect to substance abuse and that this individual has used or is using alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine. The educational vocational aspect of this case study leads us to know that this individual has a high school diploma. Also that this individual has limited employment history, including warehouse work. There are mandated conditions of release, including but not limited to anger management and substance abuse treatment. And with respect to this individual's transportation needs, this individual does not have a driver's license. So we're going to have to assume that perhaps this individual, without getting to know him, has perhaps people in his life that can help him with transportation, or he may have to use a public transportation system. So we're going to talk about these concerns, both stabilization and criminogenics, going into the next couple of slides. So let's start with the stabilization needs. So of that list that we just looked at in the previous slide, the stabilization needs, by definition, include the health component, the individual's housing situation, whether or not there's mental health needs that need to be addressed, and transportation needs. If you refer to your guidance document that was provided to you all at the beginning of the summer, I believe, you will note that there is a glossary that speaks to definitions for stabilization and criminogenic needs, but I'm going to go over that with you briefly now. Stabilization services are required for individuals who are assessed and found to be in need of housing, employment, education, social services, behavioral health treatment, and/or medical and mental health treatments. Stabilization needs are often called survival needs, and for good reason. It is nearly impossible for individuals to focus on services that they are mandated to attend, such as CBI or anger management, that they or their family, when they or their family may be experiencing poverty, hunger, homelessness, or if someone may be in need of immediate medical attention and does not have a provider or Medicaid. So in order to better assist participants to engage with mandated and recommended services, the stabilization needs really need to be addressed rather quickly. A review of these needs should be covered at the case conference meeting, as well as at the face-to-face intake appointment between the CRTF staff and the participants. So moving on to the next slide, where we identify the criminogenic needs, they are identified as characteristics, traits, problems, or issues of an individual that directly relate to the individual's likelihood to reoffend and commit more crimes. Current offense with respect to the drug trafficking and a history of criminal activity with respect to possession and sales of drugs, criminal gang activity, theft, firearms, and assault, domestic violence. We have to address the criminogenic need of family, perhaps, if that is something that the participant wishes to focus on with respect to his family. The substance abuse issue, which is identified as a criminogenic need, is also a mandated condition of release with respect to something that the individual has to participate in as substance abuse treatment. The educational vocational needs of the individual are also considered a criminogenic need. The fact that the individual does have a high school diploma is good, and it is also positive that the individual has had warehouse work in his history. However, this is a particular individual that we could identify with parole, with community supervision at the case conference, as well as the rest of our team that may benefit from something like Ready, Set, Work, or the CBI employment services that are offered in I think, Queens, CRTF. So the COMPAS Re-Entry will provide us valuable insight to ensure that these criminogenic needs are targeted with interventions such as we discussed, the DCJS-approved CBIs, T4C, the T4C booster, interactive journaling, and MRT, and also employment interventions such as CBI, EMP, and RSW. I just want to emphasize that research does support the utilization of CBI and employment readiness services for those with pro-criminal thinking, negatively influencing peers, low academic achievement, little to no employment skills or experience, substance use issues, and family discord, communication issues, to name some. So in the next few slides, we're actually going to look at the new service coordination plan template that was provided to all the CRTFs, excuse me, at the onset of the 2019-2020 contract year. If any of you do not have a copy of the template, please reach out to your OPCA representative, and we will be sure to send you a copy of one after this webinar. So if you could just go to the next slide for me, great. The service coordination plan for Evan, the first page we're going to look at is addressing a stabilization need. So as an example, we're using the current housing is temporary, as identified in the case study. So the problem is that we're addressing the current housing. The goal would be that the participant needs affordable and safe housing within 60 to 120 days. And what we also know is that Evan has an aunt who may be able to help him with housing. And we revealed that information when we had our intake appointment with the individual. So the next section of this plan is to talk about what will the participant be responsible for doing, something of a task that the participant is agreeable to do. So the participant in this particular case has agreed to stay in touch with Housing Resource Center and their community to review apartment openings and file any necessary applications, and to communicate with the aunt to discuss housing options with her as well. Moving over to the right, we're looking at what the CRTF coordinator or staff will be responsible for doing, and as I said earlier, a task per se that the individual would be able to do working with this participant. The CRTF staff would continue to accompany participants to the Housing Resource Center or DSS to review apartment openings and file necessary applications if needed. And the CRTF staff would continue to assist the participant with discussing housing options with his aunt to be able to address this particular need effectively. There is also an anticipated barrier noted, which speaks to the transportation issue that was outlined in the stabilization slide that we just looked at. So a suggested solution for this is public transportation is available, and the CRTF could assist by providing a bus pass or Metro card to this individual to help him get to appointments to be able to address this need. So moving down the service coordination plan slide a little bit, we have a status that's noted here as the person's been referred or active working toward addressing this particular stabilization need. There's also a field for a successfully completed goal and an unsuccessfully discharged, perhaps, goal. Maybe something that was modified through time, or maybe it became a need that was no longer needing to address. And then down at the bottom, we ask that the CRTF, and we're encouraging CRTF staff to make those initial appointments for the participant whenever possible, or to at least be there to assist the participant in making those first scheduled appointments so that we can ensure that the service provider or the service that we're referring them to is appropriate for the person's needs, and to also ensure that that first set of appointments is scheduled appropriately to help them transition most effectively into the community. And then, of course, you can see at the bottom that the referral information is listed, such as the local provider's name, a contact information, address of the provider, as well as phone number for the individual. And keeping in mind that this plan should be provided to the participant once it's completed and signed. Moving on to the next slide is our attempt to show you how to address a criminogenic need that was identified in the COMPAS Re-Entry and at your case conference with community supervision. So for this particular case study for Evan, we noted that a problem was history of gang involvement and negative peer affiliations. So a goal that the participant is interested in achieving is maintaining and actually obtaining more positive relationships in his community. So one of the things that the participant is interested in doing and has agreed to do based on our conversation and the intake and developing this case plan is participate in a cognitive behavioral intervention that will hopefully address the negative peer affiliation that he has been experiencing. Now, a conversation most likely occurred at case conference with community supervision, parole officer, as well as the CRTF staff to make this joint recommendation based on the information that we see in the COMPAS Re-Entry. And then the CRTF coordinator has agreed for this particular situation to enroll the participant in that joint recommended CBI And in this particular case, we're using interactive journaling, which is offered in several offices throughout this particular county. Again, a barrier has been addressed with transportation, and it has also been, a suggested solution is outlined there as well. And then moving down the service coordination plan sheet, we're going to make sure that the agency, contact, address, and phone number of the individual or agency providing the interactive journaling is listed there for the participant's convenience. We want to just encourage you to remember that we talked a little bit about this in earlier slides. So reasonable, achievable goals for these individuals, and we sometimes coin, talk about the acronym rather, SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable, and timely goals. This is an important opportunity to use effective client engagement while we are working with this individual to develop this service coordination plan. So I just want to make sure that I emphasize that when we're doing these plans with the individual, we don't want to overprogram. We want to hone in on and focus on the things that the participant wants to work on as much as the things that we believe will help the individual transition most effectively into the community.
So while we were developing this PowerPoint presentation for you, we felt it was not only important to talk about service coordination, a service coordination plan, as well as provide you a template, but also to speak briefly on the importance of case notes and progress note documentation. So how quality case notes can support your work, can certainly capture the work that you're doing, that is obvious. It demonstrates the specific work that you have completed with the participant to date, and as importantly, it acts as a receipt. It acts as a receipt confirming that you provided service coordination to the participant. As a former probation officer myself, I've always stressed the importance of making sure my case notes were up to date, detailed, and captured some very necessary information, especially when it comes to that third bullet as that case note acting as a receipt. So we're going to be going over some sample case notes now for your information. So the first one we're going to show you is a case note sample number 1. So for this particular one, it indicates the following. I met with Evan on this date. He still needs ID and food stamps. Told him to go to DSS. Evan is asking for help finding housing. We'll talk to housing rep at next staff meeting. Evan reported he went to his T4C meeting. So even though this case note captures some information, there are several important components missing, including the date itself, the location of the visit. There is a level of identifying needs, but no steps to assist or coordinate services, so those efforts aren't documented. The referral made to DSS, but doesn't indicate whether actual guidance was provided on how to go about applying for benefits. And does the participant know what to do and what steps to take once he has that DSS? There was a housing need identified, but no documentation was provided as to how the CRTF staff helped the participant address this need. No follow-up was noted on Evan's report that he is attending T4C. For example, is he engaged? How many sessions has he been going to thus far? How does he feel that is helping him? What's his level of motivation regarding thinking for a change? Things of that nature. And can you ascertain from reading this case note, just from reading the note, that the participant is engaged with the CRTF staff? So those are the kind of things that are missing from this particular sample case note. We go to a case note sample number 2, which is surrounded by clapping hands, which means it's a better template of a case note. And this is how it reads. The Navigator Service Coordinator Jones met with Evan at the Area Reporting Office on 1/29/2020. Review of the service coordination plan was completed. I accompanied Evan to DSS today to apply for food stamps and explain the application process. His DSS benefit worker's name is Mary Lewis. We are going to DMV to apply for his ID 1/30/2020 at 10 a.m. Bus pass provided to Evan to get a ride to DMV office. Evan and I are going to speak with his aunt today about housing. She may have room for him in her home and is interested in discussing this possibility. Evan expressed that he is encouraged about his new T4C group and enjoyed the first few sessions. The Navigator Coordinator will contact the T4C group facilitator, John Bauer, to discuss Evan's progress in the group. The Navigator Service Coordinator will visit with Evan again on the next Community Supervision report date, unless other needs require my involvement before then. Then there's a separate note call made on 1/30/2020 to John Bauer, confirming and advising that Evan is an active member of the T4C group. So what do we know from this case note? We know the date, the location of the visit, the name of the CRTF staff working with Evan, more importantly, the name of the CRTF staff in the case note that met with him, acting as that receipt, and a notation that the service coordination plan was reviewed. We know that service coordination took place as a staff member accompanied the participant to service providers. And we also know the participant's level of motivation and engagement in services was assessed by the CRTF staff. We now go to case note sample number 3, which also has clapping hands surrounding it. This is another example of a template for a case note. The Navigator Service Coordinator Jones met with Evan at the Area Reporting Office on 2/7/2020. Brief review of the service coordination plan was completed. Housing is Evan's priority goal at this moment. Evan advised me that he is going to his aunt's today at 1 p.m. to move furniture into his new room. He went to DSS once more to drop off the landlord statement with his new address on it in order to complete benefits application. Evan stated he is on week 4 of T4C and is learning ways to think before he acts. Navigator Service Coordinator will contact T4C Group Facilitator John Bauer to discuss Evan's progress in the group. Evan asked if I am aware of any gang prevention programs in his neighborhood. I provided him the name and phone number of the gang prevention specialist. Evan informed me that he would like to reach out to the gang prevention specialist on his own. Call made to John Bauer on 2/7/2020. Evan remains an active member of the T4C group. So as indicated, and similar to the last case note sample, we know the date, the location of the visit, the name of the CRTF staff working with Evan, and the location that this Service Coordination Plan, or SCP, was reviewed. We know that service coordination took place as a staff member accompanied the participant to service providers, and we know the participant's level of motivation and engagement was assessed by the CRTF staff. So that's a brief example of a couple of templates for case notes we wanted to provide to you. One last thing before I turn this over to Michelle is that what you as staff have to realize is that you're not the only one that's going to be potentially looking at these case notes. It could be yourself, your supervisor, potentially a parole officer or other New York State DOCCS staff, and potentially DCJS when conducting site visits. So we have to make sure that the case notes are capturing the necessary information.
Thank you, Frank. So now we're going to talk about what the end of service coordination actually looks like, or could look like. And as we know, the length of formal service coordination services is expected to last somewhere between 30 to 120 days or longer, depending on the needs of the participant. Service coordination typically ends when, first bullet, a final review of the service coordination plan has been completed. Again, as I said earlier, while service coordination is expected to last between 30 to 120 days, for most participants, the duration of service coordination will be determined by each participant's unique risk and needs. Once it is determined by the CRTF coordinator, participant, as well as parole officer, that service coordination is complete, we encourage the use of an exit summary, which is prepared and shared with the parole officer. An exit summary document reflects the participant's progress in their individual service coordination plan. A copy of this exit summary is maintained in the CRTF participant's file. Bullet number 2, the participant has achieved most or all of his or her goals outlined in the service coordination plan. So we're talking about ending the service coordination with a participant when most, if not all, of those goals in that plan have been achieved. Once it is determined that that has happened, again, we talk about providing that individual with an exit summary. It talks about whether or not things are still outstanding for the individual to work on, whether it be a goal that was partially achieved and not completely achieved, but there's no longer a need for a robust, enhanced service coordination to be provided to this individual. The third bullet talks about the CRTF participant and parole officer agreeing that the service coordination should end, and I want to emphasize again that this exit summary is something that should be provided to the participant and the parole officer, and I also want to emphasize that this is something that all three of the people working with this individual, inclusive of the participant, are agreeable to at that time. It's also important that you document in the case notes that an exit summary has been completed and provided to the parole officer as well as the participant. And I'm turning it over at this point in time to Melinda for our last OPCA slide.
Thank you, Michelle. So how do CRTF staff transition participants from CRTF involvement? Once you've done all of your engagement and you have your client in front of you and you've completed your service coordination plan, what do you really want to do next? The first thing you should really probably do is discuss the conclusion of your working relationship with the participant. You don't want to leave something hanging with your participant. You want to be able to discuss with them why you're concluding, how you're concluding, and at this point you should all be on board with the conclusion of the coordination planning. Advise the participant that should the need arise, he or she may return to the CRTF for support or additional services coordination. This is an okay thing to do. If other needs arise and this client needs to come back for services, you need to let them know that you have an open door policy and that they are able to do so. Document outstanding issues that could be addressed by the participant after CRTF involvement ends in the exit summary. Case documentation is very important, and again, as previously discussed, this is how we review the exit summary and what's happening to end coordination planning. And lastly, reinforce the goals met and celebrate the gains made by the participant. This is an important part of engaging the client, and we want to make sure that we're reinforcing the goals that we have been working on, celebrate the gains that have been made, so that as they go on their way, they're in a good place and to be positive and hopefully successful.
So our APCA contact information, OPCA rather, contact information is listed above in the slide. You can reach myself, Frank Cangiano, or Melinda Vick, as stated there. And I just want to turn this over now for the last few slides to our representative from the Office of Justice, Research, and Performance, Heather Purdy.
Hi, everyone. As the CRTFs have implemented this new enhanced service coordination model, we have had an opportunity to streamline and clarify the data entry requirements for each participant. There are a couple things that I just want to highlight before we move on to the next slide. First and foremost, it is very important for DCJS, for any program that is funded by DCJS, that we are only collecting case-level identifiable data on participants who have consented to and actually receiving services. We do recognize that the CRTF staff are putting in a tremendous amount of time and work into each case from the time that you receive the referral packet all the way through the case conferencing process and as you begin to draft a service coordination plan for each participant. We know this is happening. We are not asking you to report on staff effort in CCDS. Any case-level data that is reported through the CCDS application should reflect participant progress through various components of the CRTF intervention. So I'm hoping that that guidance will help to address a lot of the questions that we are seeing pop up in the chat pane right now. Next slide, please. So we did send out some revised guidance earlier this week with regard to the required fields that are in place for this contract in the application. The big change that you will see is that, actually, I'm going to hold off on that for 1 second. The overarching theme here with collecting case-level data for participants of the CRTF is to make sure that you are only entering participant information into CCDS if that participant is receiving service coordination. So that is how we are identifying that a participant is indeed receiving services, regular in-person services from the CRTF. A quick note, we do realize that as the contract year changed over, your work did not stop and start again. You were continuing to work with some of the same clients that you were working with at the end of the last contract year. So if you find that you have accepted somebody for service coordination under the new contract, but perhaps their case conferencing date was before the contract year started, you'll notice that you are unable to enter that case conference date in the CCDS application. So we will be working with you separately to get the correct dates for those case conferences, and we will know that you can't enter the case conference date if you're leaving it blank in the application. So if you would like to reach out to us just to let us know that you believe you will have case conferencing dates that we need to work separately to get in, that would be lovely. If not, you will be hearing from us afterwards about how to fill in some of those unreportable case conferencing dates. And just as a reminder, it is the same identifying information that we are asking for CRTF participants, including the NICED, the DOCCS supervision level, admission date, and last date of formal services. Those are kind of the person level data points that we are collecting. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the milestone target dates. So based on your feedback, we have made some changes in the last couple of days here to simplify reporting. We do realize that there was some confusion around how people were defining developing, completing, finalizing, and signing the service coordination plan, and this was creating some real confusion when people were trying to enter data. So you'll notice here that there is no longer a milestone or target associated with intake and service coordination completion. If you have previously entered data into that field, you do not need to go back and delete that data. We will be able to just disregard it when you finalize your data submission for this quarter. If you have already finalized and would want to make any changes to your milestone dates, especially for service coordination start date, please reach out to us separately. If you have finalized your data submission, you will not be able to go back into the system and make those changes yourself. So our goal with this change really is to strengthen the definition for service coordination start, as this is when the participant begins to benefit from the service coordination plan that the CRTF staff have developed. For most participants, the service coordination plan will be finalized during the intake appointment. We heard you when you said that there are often barriers to getting a same-day signature from the participant. So the plan does not need to be signed in order for you to report service coordination start date in the CCDS application. However, a signed copy is required for case file documentation purposes. Actually, Frank, can you go back? So the case conferencing date, we are asking you to report for all CRTF participants who are receiving service coordination. The service coordination end date remains unchanged. This is the date service coordination ends as indicated in the exit summary provided back to parole. And we are asking you to report enrollment and successful completion dates for any cognitive behavioral or employment readiness intervention that your participants are engaging in. And one final note, we are making an effort in 2020 to really clean up our data and make sure that programs understand the importance of the admission and discharge fields in CCDS. These fields are the way that we know a participant is actively receiving services from the CRTF. The admission date is the flag for us that that person is on your roster, that you are regularly providing services to them. It should match the service coordination start date that you are entering into the milestone target field. The last date of formal services for us is the flag that service coordination has ended. It also prompts you to enter in a reason for the end of formal services. It's important for us to be able to identify whether someone has successfully completed their service coordination, whether they were unsuccessful in completing service coordination, or whether there are circumstances beyond their control that would result in an administrative discharge. Those definitions are in the user guide for the CCDS application. If you have any questions about those things moving forward, please do not hesitate to reach out to either Dean Wells, myself, Heather Purdy, or our API data mailbox, which I believe all of you are well accustomed to emailing at this point.
Heather, this is Michelle. Can I actually just reemphasize also that you did send out a new required fields document within the past couple of days?
We did. That went
Okay.
out, I believe, on Monday.
So that is something that should be reviewed and now used to replace a previous document.
Correct. You will see the last updated date of January 27th in the top right-hand corner of that.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Frank Cangiano for some last-minute conversation and requests.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. And to kind of close this training webinar, we all want to thank you for being a part of this training webinar. We all know that you have very busy schedules, and we appreciate the time that you took out of your busy days to be on this. We are going to be placing you all on mute for about 30 seconds to a minute just to address some of the questions that we received in the chat box and hopefully provide some answers to you. In that time, if you want to ask any questions, type into the chat box, and we will try to address them if we can right now at this webinar.
Sure.
If we cannot address them and we prefer to send you something officially via email, we will certainly do that if we need to have further internal conversation about it. So I'm going to place you all on mute now, but we will be back in about a minute or so. Thank you. Okay, everyone, well, we're back, so we're just going to be answering some of the questions that were asked during the course of this webinar. So a couple of the questions indicated, will this slide presentation be made available? And the answer is yes. We will be sending out this PowerPoint as a PDF to all the people who attended this webinar. This webinar has also been recorded, so we will also be posting that recording, looks like onto the DCJS public website in order to provide guidance to the CRTS. And so if and when that occurs, you'll be notified of when it's posted on the website. So yes, this PowerPoint presentation will be made both as a PDF and as a posting on the public website.
Thank you, Frank. So with respect to a question about the exit summary, is there a form we should use for this? Is the 45-day form the form to be used? Now, let's go back to the guidance document and all of the one-on-one conversations we had with the CRTF that began in June of this year in preparation for the 2019-20 CRTF contract year. We are no longer performance-based, we are expenditure-based. That's number one. Number two, the 45-day form is not being used. It is no longer an objective in your work plan. So we would prefer that you look at the service coordination plan that was provided, the template that was provided, and look at the fact that you are able to make that into an exit summary of some sort or a final service coordination plan that can be provided to the participant and parole. So we're not giving you per se a formal exit summary document to use. You can use whatever you think fits the needs of your participant. However, we do think that that service coordination plan template can be used as the appropriate exit summary of the services, goals achieved, et cetera, for the participants. And the last question I see is, if someone is just visiting and only needs to be referred to an anger management program, should this person be provided a service coordination plan? So I think we may have to talk about this a little bit with respect to really understanding this question. I think that if you're receiving a referral from the community supervision, from parole, and that you're case conferencing this individual and that it's decided that anger management is something that you need to provide, I would think that would be, there's a reason why you're getting a referral for this individual to come to your program. However, if I'm not reading your question correctly with respect to visiting, if this is a walk-in or if this is just someone coming into you to say, hi, I'm on parole and I need an anger management program, can you make a referral to me? Can you tell me how I can get this service? That may not be someone that you're going to work with. So this is a conversation, if I were you as a coordinator, I would have with parole. I would ask the parole officer if this is a person that you actually are being referred to work with this individual in an intensive way. And okay, I see that. Yes, it is a walk-in. So a walk-in on parole, the first thing that you should do is contact parole. Is contact the parole officer to talk about whether or not this is going to be a legitimate referral to the CRTF. Because if it is someone that the parole officer would like to work with the CRTF, it's likely that they're not only going to need anger management program. So I think that would be my advice to you would be to speak with parole first and foremost to determine whether or not you're actually going to get a referral for this individual, and then that will tell you whether or not this individual is going to require service coordination.
Moreover, when it comes to anger management, it also might be a mandated condition for their supervision with the Community Supervision Office. So you're going to want to distinguish between those two as well, because it could be something that they may have been referred to one agency and they might be trying to bypass them. Those are things that you want to navigate with community supervision and their parole officer as part of their mandated conditions.
Thank you.
Okay, and Heather, if I'm not mistaken, anything regarding reporting, they can reach out to either yourself or Dean Wells.
Yep, that would be great.
Regarding any reporting type of questions that they have. Because I do see a couple of reporting questions here. So any specific questions you have, you can certainly reach out to them. Any other questions that are asked, we will certainly have offline conversations with the CRTF staff about. So we just want to make sure that everybody is on the same board with their programming. and utilizing the resources that they have as effectively as they can. So obviously, our assistance doesn't stop with this webinar, so if you have any questions for us after this webinar or during this process, please feel free to contact us. Thank you all, and I hope all of you have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.